Have you ever stopped to think about why there are so many smart, talented people full of potential, yet living mediocre lives? Why that brilliant classmate from school never took off, while the try-hard of the group is out there achieving everything? The uncomfortable truth is this: intelligence without discipline is like having a Ferrari with no gas. It looks impressive in the garage, but it won't get you anywhere. And if you've ever felt that frustration of knowing you could do more, of having giant dreams but waking up every day trapped in the same destructive habits, then this story was made for you. Today I'm going to tell you about a young man who had everything going for him but was losing badly at the game of life, until he discovered the brutal secret they don't teach you in school. Buckle up, because what you're about to learn here isn't some fluffy self-help theory. It's the real, raw, battle-tested method that separates those who achieve from those who just complain. And at the end, you'll have to answer an uncomfortable question for yourself. Are you willing to do what needs to be done? Or will you keep being a slave to your own mind? You know that young person everyone looks at and thinks, this guy's going places? The one with that spark in their eyes, ideas bubbling in their mind, and potential that jumps out at anyone? Well, that young person exists on every corner, in every classroom, carrying giant dreams under their arm. Dreams of winning, scholarships, achieving success, transforming their own story. But here's the detail few people notice. Having talent is like having a powerful car in your garage. If you don't know how to drive it, if you don't have the discipline to put gas in it and keep up with maintenance, that hot rod is nothing more than dead weight taking up space. The talented young person lives this paradox. They can see the goal ahead, feel the flame of motivation burning inside their chest, but haven't yet discovered that talent without determination is like a seed without fertile soil. Now imagine that brilliant mind working like a web browser with 50 tabs open at the same time. One moment they're thinking about studying, the next they've jumped to the idea of a side project, then back to remembering that series they need to watch. Concentration slips away like water running through their fingers, and focus becomes a rare luxury they can barely sustain for 5 minutes straight. This mental restlessness isn't laziness, no. It's the result of living in an era where everything fights for your attention with the ferocity of gladiators in an arena. The problem is that without self-control over your own thoughts, this young person ends up being a slave to their own mind. They sit down to study, but their head has already traveled to the weekend, to that distant dream, to some silly worry, and the routine that should be building their future becomes chaotic mess that leads nowhere. And here enters the great villain of the modern story, that shiny rectangle that fits in your pocket and promises just 5 minutes. The phone becomes procrastination's best friend, that silent accomplice who always has an excuse ready. I'll just check my messages. A quick peek at Instagram won't kill anyone, but those 5 minutes turn into 30, which turn into 2 hours. And before you know it, the whole day has drained down the social media sewer while productive habits were left waiting in line. The worst part is this doesn't happen because the young person is dumb or uninterested. Quite the opposite. It happens because these platforms were designed by tech geniuses whose only goal is to steal your attention and hold it hostage. Each notification is a hook thrown in the water. Each infinite scroll is a trap that hijacks the mind and sabotages any chance of real mental training. And there goes another day without real progress, another step postponed toward the goal, another night lying in bed with that bitter taste of, I could have done more. Then comes the decisive day, that exam that could change everything, that scholarship test that represented the gateway to the big dream. He wakes up early, heart pounding hard, mentally rehearsing everything he studied in recent weeks. But when he sits in the chair and looks at the first question, reality hits like a punch to the gut. That choppy studying, those sessions interrupted by notifications, that lack of concentration, all of it comes due now. The hours pass like cruel slow motion. He knows the answers, or at least thinks he does, but his mind won't cooperate. The information is all scrambled. The focus he never trained simply doesn't show up when he needs it most. When he turns in the test and walks out of that room, something inside him already knows. The failure didn't come from lack of ability, but from lack of discipline, and that truth hurts more than any failing grade ever could. The following days are the heaviest. That pain of defeat isn't just passing discomfort, it's a wound that burns every time he remembers the wasted hours, the moments when he chose the easy path of procrastination. The frustration comes with a cruel mental movie. All the times he grabbed his phone instead of opening the book, all the nights he went to sleep without fulfilling the promised routine, All those "I'll start tomorrows" that never became today. But it's precisely at this rock bottom that something magical can happen. Pain, when properly leveraged, becomes fuel for overcoming. And this young man begins to see with brutal clarity that the problem was never lack of intelligence or dreams. The problem was always the absence of self-control, the lack of determination to tame his own restless mind. This awakening of consciousness is like turning on the light in a dark room. Suddenly, everything becomes visible: the mistakes, the destructive patterns, but also the path he needs to walk from here forward. It was on one of those afternoons, with his head down and soul heavy, that he crossed paths with someone who would change his trajectory. Coach Miller, a gentleman with a firm but kind gaze, one of those who carries decades of experience on his shoulders and wisdom in his words. The meeting wasn't planned. These things rarely are. But when Miller noticed that young man carrying the weight of defeat on his shoulders, he simply pulled up a chair and said, "Can I tell you a story that'll make you see this failure differently?" And so began a conversation that would last hours but mark an entire lifetime. Miller wasn't one of those mentors who runs their mouth about cheap motivation or ready-made self-help phrases. He was different. He spoke with the authority of someone who had seen hundreds of talented young people waste their potential for lack of mental discipline, but also with the hope of someone who knew that every failure carries within it the seed of transformation. "Success," he said with a sideways smile, "isn't for those who dream big. It's for those who control their own mind while chasing those dreams." Miller then stood up and made a simple gesture with his hands, as if holding an invisible bow. "Have you ever seen an archer hit the target?" he asked in that calm way of his. He doesn't look at the sky, doesn't look to the sides, doesn't think about 1,000 things at once. He takes a deep breath, fixes his eyes on the objective, and everything around disappears. There's only him and the target. That, my young friend, is true focus. The metaphor hit right on target, like a perfect arrow. Miller continued, "You have the bow, your talent. You have the arrow, your dreams and goals. But without concentration to aim properly, without discipline to maintain steady posture, you'll shoot all over the place and never hit anything." It was there, in that simple but powerful moment, that the young man understood for the first time that it wasn't enough to have a pretty target in front of you. You had to train your mind every day not to lose sight of that target, even when the phone beeped, even when procrastination whispered in your ear. Mental discipline isn't a gift that falls from the sky, Miller continued, crossing his arms and looking straight into the young man's eyes. It's a muscle you need to exercise every single day, just like you would at a gym. The difference is this mental training doesn't show in the mirror, but the results appear in every goal achieved, in every dream that comes off the paper. He paused strategically and added, "Without this discipline, the mind becomes a wild horse that takes you in any direction, except where you actually need to go." The young man was beginning to connect the dots. All those mornings when he woke up with determination but ended the day having produced nothing. All the times the routine crumbled at the first distraction. It wasn't lack of will, it was lack of command over his own head. Miller knew this all too well. You can have Einstein's intelligence, but if you don't have the self-control to plant your ass in the chair and do what needs to be done, you'll end up watching less talented geniuses pass you by. Because at the end of the day, success doesn't choose the smartest, it chooses the most disciplined. It was then that Miller pulled out a paper napkin and a pen from his pocket, in that unassuming way of someone about to reveal a valuable secret. "Write this down," he said. 4 simple rules that'll turn the game around if you have the courage to follow them. First rule, define your target with crystal clarity. None of this "I want to be successful," but rather, "I'm going to win this scholarship in 6 months." Second rule, eliminate distractions before you start. Turn off the phone, disappear from social media, create an environment that works for you, not against you. Miller continued, marking up the paper. Third rule, create a non-negotiable routine and treat it like a sacred commitment. Doesn't matter if you feel like it or not. You show up and do the work every day at the same time. And the fourth, which he made sure to circle twice, celebrate small victories but never slack off on discipline, because the path of overcoming is built from daily habits, not sporadic bursts of motivation. Motivation is that annoying visitor who leaves whenever it feels like it, he said with a smile. But discipline? That one lives with you and doesn't abandon you on difficult days. The first days of change were tough as breaking rocks with your bare hands, and nobody said it would be different. The young man woke up at 6 in the morning, when his body still begged for one more hour of sleep, and started the routine Miller had helped design. Phone on airplane mode until finishing the 3 hours of morning study, black coffee without social media, total focus on books that before seemed so boring, but now gained different meaning. Each page turned was a small victory against yesterday's procrastination. But the real turn didn't come from the routine itself. It came from the stubborn repetition of it. On the third day, his mind was already screaming for a little break. On the fifth, the phone called like a siren singing to a sailor. But he held firm to the 4 rules. The new habits began to stick like strong glue. Waking up early became automatic. Sitting down to study became natural. Ignoring notifications became power. And then something fascinating happened. The discipline that before seemed like a prison now revealed itself as the greatest possible freedom, because finally he had self-control over his own life, not the other way around. 3 months later, the young man was unrecognizable, not physically, but in posture, in his gaze, in the way he commanded his own mind. That daily mental training had sculpted something new inside him, a quiet confidence of someone who knows they can count on themselves. Friends noticed the change and asked what the secret was, expecting to hear about some miracle app or revolutionary technique, but the answer was too simple to be sexy. I just woke up every day and did what needed to be done, even when I didn't feel like it. The overcoming didn't come in a magic snap, but in hundreds of small choices repeated until they became second nature. Each morning that beat laziness, each afternoon that resisted the phone, each night going to sleep knowing he had honored his commitments. All of this stacked solid bricks in the construction of his success. Miller would call occasionally to check progress, and always ended the conversation with the same phrase: "Remember, champ, you're not competing with anyone out there. You're competing with the version of you that wants to quit. And that version? That one you can never let win." The day of the new exam arrived, but this time everything was different. When he sat in the chair and opened the test, there was no uncontrolled anxiety or scattered mind. There was surgical focus, concentration sharp as a blade. Each question was answered with the confidence of someone who had done their homework right, who had invested months of genuine discipline. The hours passed and he knew, deep in his soul, that this was no longer the same young man who had failed months ago. This one had been forged in the fire of daily determination. When the results came out and there was his name on the list of those approved for the scholarship, the emotion came strong but accompanied by something greater, the certainty that this wasn't luck or chance. It was the direct fruit of habits built, routine maintained even on difficult days, self-control exercised until it became instinct. Success had arrived, yes, but the true victory had already happened back there. On the first day he chose discipline instead of procrastination, the moment he decided his dream was worth more than 5 minutes of infinite scrolling on Instagram. Weeks after the approval, he met Miller again in that same place where it all began. The mentor looked at him with that smile of someone who knew exactly what had happened and said, "Now you understand the secret that separates those who achieve from those who only dream, right?" And before the young man could answer, he added, "Controlling the mind isn't about repressing or torturing it. It's about training it to work in your favor, to serve your goals instead of sabotaging them. It's transforming that wild animal into a racehorse that takes you exactly where you need to go." The final lesson was crystal clear. You can have all the talent in the world. You can have dreams the size of the universe. You can even have the best opportunities knocking at your door. But if you don't have the discipline to command your own thoughts, if you don't have the focus to ignore the 1,000 distractions the world throws in your face every day, none of it will matter. True power isn't in having a brilliant mind, but in having the self-control to direct that brilliance to the right target. And that, my friend, is the difference between smart people who fail and disciplined people who win, even when they start with less. And there's the complete story. From failure to achievement, from uncontrolled mind to focus sharp as a blade. But now I ask you, what about you? How many times have you already promised yourself you'd change, that you'd drop the procrastination, that you'd finally take seriously that goal that keeps poking you deep in your soul? How many scholarships? How many opportunities? How many dreams have you already let slip away because you chose the easy path of distraction instead of the difficult path of discipline? The naked truth is you already have everything you need to win. The intelligence is there. The potential is there. All the tools are available. What's missing is that brutal decision to take control of your own mind and stop being hostage to your own impulses. So tell me, are you going to keep being that talented young person who fails because they have no self-control? Or will you become that determined person who conquers everything because they mastered the art of mental discipline? The choice has always been yours, and it needs to be made now, not tomorrow. If this story moved you, if it awakened something sleeping inside, don't let that energy die. Subscribe to the channel now and turn on notifications, because every week I bring content like this, real, direct, no BS, to help you get out of mediocrity and build the extraordinary life you deserve. Your future self is waiting for you on the other side of discipline. Let's go.